Hi everyone, welcome to Chapter 1. I'm going to give you guys just a short lecture overview, if you will, of Chapter 1 and kind of getting started with history class. Each week I'll provide a short lecture, 10 to 15 minutes, over some key points, and I'm going to use the PowerPoint that I provided in Wednesday's folder. I won't cover everything on it, but I will talk about a few of the areas that I think are most important. And so the very first topic in this chapter is broken into really 5 different areas, are the first American settlers. And the first settlers, you can see here a picture of different types of hunting tips that they might have used. And notice they're all a little bit different. And one of the important things that sometimes people, I think, do is just think of all Native Americans as the same culture, the same ways of life. They're not. As you can tell, these tips right here are all different, indicating different styles and different patterns that they might have used for hunting. And so, of course, we always hear about Christopher Columbus discovering the New World, which he didn't discover the New World. He simply reignited the imagination of people about the New World. Columbus believed he had discovered, or had reached, I should say, the Indies. He was trying to get to India. As we know, he was unsuccessful. However, what he did find was a very diverse group of people settling the American continent. Again, very different from each other. He found hunters, he found gatherers, he traveled in small bands of people, hunting large herds of animals coming from many different places. And there are several theories about where these individuals came from, several ideas, if you will, about where they came from. And the ideas vary. Some say that some will say that they crossed the Bering Land Bridge. You can see a picture over here, crossing the Bering Land Bridge, coming across into North America. That's one theory. Some will say that they were a offspring from some European culture. I've heard theories that they were one of the lost tribes of Israel. But whatever theories there are, what we do know is what Columbus found was not a unorganized society, if you will. In some places, yes, but in many places you have very advanced civilizations, very advanced societies. For instance, you have the Clovis culture, very advanced, very sophisticated for the time, migrated seasonally to their hunting locations, very mobile, lived off the land, groups of interrelated families. But at the end of the last ice age, there came a point in which things began to change, and Native Americans began to have to make decisions. And the shift really wiped out a lot of the big game animals, or at least depleted their numbers. And so they began to shift their tactics from mastodons and other large animals to buffalo, to bison, and began to develop new ways of living and new traditions. They began the technique of stampeding bison over cliffs. Again, this is very sophisticated. You think about what you have to do in order to get animals to move to one location, and they're stampeding entire herds over cliffs for food, for clothing, for shelter. You can see here on the screen the different cultural routes, the different trade routes that existed, regional centers, local centers. So again, a very advanced, organized network of people. Across North America, you also have different cultures that emerge. You have the desert culture, you can see on the screen the different things that they were known for, that they excelled in. This is where you begin to see the first permanently settled communities in North America, is in the Great Plains and in the Southwest. You have the forest cultures in eastern United States, small game hunting, gathering, seeds, nuts, berries, other things like this, hunted and fished as well. Began to attract permanent settlements. You also began to see different roles or specialization between males and females and what they were asked to do for the groups. And this is one of the areas I really want to touch on today, is the development of farming. Because I think sometimes we kind of bypass this, but in a lot of respects, this is the most important decision man maybe made in going forward. You can see here a picture, a drawing of the Native American farming. Notice the crude tool that he's using to move the land around. So farming began in Mexico about 5,000 years ago. Talking about potatoes and beans, squash, tomatoes, peppers. And what farming does is it requires people to make a choice. It requires people to either choose to settle down, develop communities, take up farming, give up the nomadic lifestyle. Because with farming, you think about it, you can't really leave your crops alone. You have to stay close by. You have to protect them. You have to have a settlement of people to farm. You have to protect your settlement. It's not just the decision, oh, I'm going to start running around looking for animals. It's a decision to completely change your life. So for people to decide to farm, there must have been something that they saw that they benefited from. And it wasn't like everyone decided to do it at the same time either. Some cultures took longer to decide to farm. Some cultures took quicker to decide to farm. And when you begin to farm, you begin to see the rise of larger cities. Teotihuacan in Mexico, you get around 200,000 inhabitants. Farming also develops an urban society, which develops a culture, the haves and the have-nots, elite classes of people, systems of keeping records, systems of public projects. All of these things have to be developed and created in order, or not in order, but they all happen as a result of farming. Farming stimulates complexity. It binds people into tribes. It binds people into groups much more so than simple hunting and gathering do. So again, it's something that takes a decision. And it's also something that changes, again, the way that people think. And I'm not going to read this whole slide here, but you begin to have to decide, okay, who's going to do what? You have better food, you have a larger population. And if you think about it this way, there's only a certain amount of land, and there's only a certain amount of area you can farm. Well, if you have two groups of people who are both deciding to farm, you're going to come in competition for the land if you're in a certain area. And this battle for land eventually is going to lead to war, because you're both fighting over water rights or mineral rights or better farmland. You can kind of see a picture here of people deciding to farm or not. You then proceed. We talked about, as I mentioned a while ago, it's not a automatic decision. It's a cost benefit. You have to look at, is this something I want to do? Is it something that I want to put my family through? And so with farming, the diet becomes more centralized. It's not a great word to use, but it becomes more regular. If you forage, you have a much variable diet. Not a lot of farming it doesn't require a lot of work if you're foraging. Not a lot of climatic influences. Farmers, of course, you're more susceptible to disease and famine than foragers. So again, it's something you have to weigh out. It's something you have to consider when you decide to farm or not. It's not an automatic decision that people made. Well, that's just a brief lecture talking about, in particular, farming and kind of what Christopher Columbus found when he arrived. Your chapter also talks about the different groups of people that Columbus encountered in different parts of the country. Make sure you read all this, look at all this. As always, let me know if you have any questions. I'll post another video next week talking about Chapter 2. Until then, I hope to see you soon.